The Independence Institute. Thank you for joining us again on a Tuesday night to throw back some whiskey. Now, some of you, depending on where you are in the world, pardon me as I put my earpiece back in, are allowed to actually have a life again. If you're in the Denver area, Boulder area, metro area, no, you're still under house arrest. So we're here to help you through that. Again, the idea is pretty simple. We might accidentally talk some politics, but really the idea here is to break the quarantine, have a few drinks amongst friends, and talk. And I want you to be part of it. So if you're on the Zoom meeting and you want to be part, just raise your hand and we'll try to get to you. Now, raising your hand doesn't mean actually physically raising your hand. It's that button down there that says raise hand. If you have a question, find somebody under 30, they'll explain it to you. So somebody that's always good to drink with is the district attorney of which district? I just say
it's a big one. Yeah. It's 18. Yeah.
18. George Brauchler. Thank you for being.
Oh, are you kidding? Thanks for having me. This is great.
Let me start off with this. So last week, Tom Cranowitter came by and donated some of this Ardbeg, which I think might now be my favorite Scotch. So,
Thank you
we'll get going with this first.
You didn't card me first. Is that an issue?
I don't need to card you because you're
have a fake
damn old.
ID.
All right.
Great.
How thin are you now? I've never seen you this thin. Are
I know.
You sick?
No, I've let me just put it in perspective. I left for Iraq a decade ago, so I'm a much younger man, probably about 192 pounds, a healthy 192. Came back.
I haven't seen 192 in decades.
I came back at 169, and I thought this is the thinnest I've been in forever. I'm so happy. And then because of this Governor Polis shutdown thing with the coronavirus and all that stuff, I have been working out every day, which I don't normally get a chance to do. I am down to 156, which I don't think I've been in the mid 150s since my sophomore year of high school football season.
I mean this as sincerely as possible. Screw you.
Yeah, there was a person I ran into who was saying, well, what's the goal? I'm like, at first it was to just get leaner, get healthy. Now it's to see how far can I take this? And then she said, look, old and skinny isn't attractive. And I said, screw you for calling me old. And that was how that thing ended right there.
Worked out just fine. All right. So let me ask you a couple questions.
Are there designated drink breaks or am I allowed to go right into it?
No, you have to wait to the end.
We allowed to drink? Is this FCC stuff?
No, this isn't FCC stuff at all.
Thank God.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You're one of those guys. You have to follow the law because
mostly. Yeah. I mean, largely.
What do you?
Almost entirely.
Almost entirely?
Yeah, almost entirely.
Then let me ask you about breaking the law. And I'm talking about
Beavis and Butthead.
Beavis and Butthead, breaking the law. Let me ask you about civil disobedience and breaking house arrest.
Yep.
And by the way, you've been taking up some of my space that used to be in the Denver Post.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Buddy, look, I'm sure everybody's like, bring back the varsity guy. Take the JV guy, put him back on the bench.
I'll give you a word of advice. There are more than two sexes. Just remember that, and you'll be able to work for the Post for quite some while.
I'm trying to build that into my column, but I just...
More. There are so many more. Has anybody brought a prosecution case to you for breaking any of these emergency orders?
No. With this caveat, I had a conversation with Sheriff Tyler Brown, who's the Arapahoe County Sheriff, and we discussed sort of an approach to this. And what I'm proud of is across our jurisdiction, it's a very diverse jurisdiction, Arapahoe and Douglas, but also Elbert and Lincoln. And the attitude is the same, is that we're not looking to get people into the court process for this. We're just looking to try to get compliance through cajoling and education and gentle nudging. But one area that we agreed upon is if someone is going to violate the law at a time when they should also be at stay at home or in some other thing, we might tack that charge onto something, for instance, like a DUI. But we have not had a single case.
So you're doing what cops always do, which is we're pulling you over because of your headlight, but while we've got you there,
you've got a severed head in the trunk.
Notice that you don't wear your seatbelt and you've got an open bottle and this and that.
I haven't seen a headlight charge stand alone with a seatbelt violation in 25 years. But what we do in these circumstances is say, look, if you're going to drive drunk in the middle of the day for no legitimate purpose, then we're going to throw this thing on there. What happens to it once we finally get back into court? My God, John, that could be months. I mean, the Supreme Court has said we're not going to do a jury trial before June. And in Arapahoe County, the word is that once we start doing jury trials, there's only one courtroom that can fit the social distancing requirements. It's the one we did the Aurora Theater Massacre trial in. So you have one courtroom in one of the busiest jurisdictions in the state able to do one trial a week. What are we going to do? I don't know.
So let me ask you about this. Listen, you're a rules guy. You're a law and order guy. All right. So if you've ever read my favorite book, which explains the real differences between libertarians and conservatives, it's called the Three Languages of Politics. And I've always wondered what the difference between libertarians and conservatives are. And I found that, I mean, I understand libertarians. We see the world on the spectrum between liberty and coercion. But social conservatives see the world often between chaos and civility. And therefore, rule of law guys, are there to make sure that we have a civil society, that people follow the rules. But what happens when the rules are, in my opinion, go against our fundamental rights of free association, right to travel, right to worship, even right to speech?
Yeah, listen, from the standpoint of the guy who's the chief law enforcement officer for this giant 1 million+ person jurisdiction, I have a couple choices. One is I can simply announce for these public health orders, I have no intention of enforcing them under any circumstances because I've decided that on my own, I think they're violative of the Constitution. I have a problem with that because once I bring that power into me, whoever replaces me, and they could be on the other side of the political spectrum, could decide another law that we count on to protect our liberties. You know what? I don't want to follow that one because I think it's unconstitutional. I think the other problem that we have, practically speaking, is if I choose not to enforce those public health orders, and like I said, we've had very, very light touch on these at all. Guess who gets to come in and prosecute them? The Attorney General. So from my standpoint, I'd rather have my community subjected to my discretion than the Attorney General from Denver and Boulder's discretion.
Drink.
Yeah.
Because
I need that twisty straw.
Because I don't like that at all. So
Me neither.
Here's what I just heard. Hey, if I don't enforce these stupid ass laws, then the AG is going to come in here and he's much more of a fascist about this stuff than me. Is that basically what I heard?
No, it's not if I don't enforce these, because, and it's not that we haven't enforced them. It's that our approach to enforcement has been this super light, almost never use it kind of touch to only attach it to other criminal violations when they occur. It's if I make a public statement, I will not enforce these. There are no circumstances. Then what I'm inviting is the response from the health department to say, okay, if you're not going to do the job, we're going to go up the street here, catty corner to the Capitol, and we'll get our buddy Phil to do it.
Got it. All right. That being said,
yeah,
I find these orders to be so un-American, and I am amazed how many people have been scared into compliance. And that if you question these laws, if you question these emergency rules, well, obviously, you want to kill people, and the media has helped amplify this, and it seems to be working. I think once we start seeing the economic damage of what's happened, when we have higher unemployment than the Great Depression, as we do right now, people might start realizing what's really going on.
I think that you're right. I don't like these orders. I don't like the fact that the Tri-County Health Department, of which I'm subject, I live in Douglas County, I have a big office in Arapahoe, is subjected to the orders of an unelected, unaccountable bureaucrat. Now, say what you will. I mean, he's a super smart guy, Dr. Douglas is, but let's be honest. He got put in his job by appointees, not by people who are elected. He is answerable to them. And the problem that creates is you get these laws and these orders, just like you talked about, that carry the force of law, and they touch upon all sorts of different liberties where we have basically thrown in the towel and said, we can't trust each other to take the education that we give, like social distancing. And unless we have the threat of the force of law, we just can't count on each other to treat each other the way that we should to try to protect each other.
Have you prosecuted anybody? Has anybody
ever?
No. Well,
yeah.
Some people wonder. No, but for this stuff,
not a one.
Have the police or sheriff's office cited anybody that you know of?
No, only in the manner that I talked about, which is, look, DUI, do we throw a public health order on? I'm sure there's a handful of those, but at best just that. But no, we haven't.
tell you what, let's grab some of these Zoomers.
Yeah,
Again,
yeah, for sure.
if you want to be part of this, just go to Zoom. You have to do this one through Zoom, and put your hand up there, and we'll get you. Let's talk with Mark Milliman. Mark, I need to know, what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking an upslope pale ale.
Pale ale's a good one, man. I like
Pale
it.
ale's a good
It's
one.
stuff.
All right, what do you got for us?
I'm sorry?
What do you have for us other than drinking?
Other than drinking, well, I apologize for not dressing for the occasion this evening, but
We
you know,
presume you're wearing pants.
We assume you're not wearing pants.
Not wearing pants.
The
right.
only benefit of all this is that half of America has gone pantsless. And just so you know, so in my house, my son who has Down syndrome and we never want to wear pants because, and my daughter is like, what is with you guys? Put on some pants. And we're there in our boxers and we're happy.
Sure.
We're productive. This is what America is all about, I explained to her.
Freedom.
well, I won't stand up then. I've been on these things all day. So taking this out of the realm of civil disobedience, of which I do not have a problem with, and we're almost to that point anyway, I believe. But looking at possibly filing an injunction. I'm in Boulder County, so of course you're extremely familiar with the situation in our county. And been in constant contact with our health department here. And these are very capricious orders. The science doesn't back it up. The rationale has been constantly changing for the purpose of the orders. And we're basically being punished in home without due process. What about starting a class action suit? I'm more than willing, with some assistance, to file one. We have the data, and I think we should have possibly the law on our side. But what about filing an injunction in federal court? Obviously not Judicial District 20, but in federal court against these orders.
Let me jump on this one, Mark. This is probably the 6th time today someone has approached me about whether we at Independence or we are part of a group to bring forward some sort of legal action. Right. I'm not the lawyer here, you are. My suspicion is that we're not going to get any injunctive relief. That is, there's not going to be an injunction on these rules because by the time we get to it, I think most of it is passed. The question is there some sort of damages for people who've lost their businesses, lost their jobs, lost their incomes because of this, lost what they have? Let me ask you.
Yeah, I think arguably there is, but remember, the government enjoys a ton of governmental immunity for all sorts of its wacky decisions and what it does. And that doesn't just apply to policy, that applies to individual actions by government officials. The question about federal involvement is key here because I agree with you. I don't think it can win at the state, in part because the way the statute is drawn, the way the laws are drawn up, is it says you do have the right to challenge the decision of a Tri-County Health Department order that shuts down this or does that, but the court must hear it within 90 days. Well, look, 90 days after the order's in place and you file the thing, your business is gone, your liberties have been stepped on, it's over. If we wanted something meaningful at the state level, we will go in and change that statute to make for more immediate relief. But the federal level one is different. I also believe, though, that this conditioning of the public to believe in, going along with what the government says, I think it's not lost on the judiciary as well. It would take somebody, Allison Eidish, at the federal level to really see this for what it is, in my opinion, and give it the fair reading.
All right, so I'm getting a lot of folks who are suggesting we get some sort of class action lawsuit, that we do something here. My reaction is, I don't know anybody who's got the money to do so.
Right. You'd have to find someone to fund it. And on top of that, what you really need is you need the kind of legal genius that can sit there and assess this from the appellate level and say, are we about to make bad law? Because if we launch this class action lawsuit and what it turns into at the appellate level is a court coming in and saying, absolutely, the state has the authority to do this, and absolutely, you will never recover any funds for the damages caused by these orders, we've made things worse. We haven't made things better. And you need someone super smart to look at, like a guy like Dave Kopel.
Well, he's been drunk on this show, so you don't want Dave Copel to be doing that.
Sober Dave Copel.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't seen a sober Dave Copel in about a decade.
Dave hasn't either, so that's okay.
Yeah, that's good. He's actually better than. Hey, let's grab some more of these Zoomers. That was a great one. Let's talk to Kathleen. Hey, Kathleen Chandler. I know you're not a big drinker, but I need to know, what are you drinking?
She's a small drinker.
She's a
My
small drinker.
Diet Coke, of course. Diet Coke is, man, it's the drink of choice.
What's in the Diet Coke?
What's in the Diet Coke?
I'm a Diet Coke, literally, like that and water. Okay, but my question is, because Douglas County has opted out of the Tri-County Health, and they now have their own system of enforcement. How does that happen in your district when you can cross over county lines, do something in Douglas County, and come back to Arapahoe County? Are you gonna?
That's the question.
Yeah.
So now we've got this
salon or something.
We got this patchwork of laws.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I need to get my nails done. You know me. I
Right,
can't get it done here.
I know.
I can't get it done in
Petty.
Boulder. So can I go up to Weld County? And whose law am I breaking?
Right.
I don't think it'd be Weld Counties, and I don't think you're going to get pushback on it. I think you're right that it creates this disparity that encourages people to take their business elsewhere. I think it's in part why you see Mayor Mike Kaufman from Aurora outraged that Arapahoe County has been lumped in with Adams County and not allowed the same economic freedoms that Douglas County is pursuing. I live in Douglas, so my hat's off to the commissioners. But I do agree with you, Kathleen. I think it creates a real disparity. I think practically speaking, you're not going to see a single criminal charge from any agency in either county that is going to be reflective of someone trying to get the benefit of where they can take their business. I just don't see that happen.
All right. So, by the way, because it could be the Scotch, let's just make it clear that's not legal advice from you, but that's just your observation.
I'm just hypothetically speaking.
So think about this, though. I agree with you. If somebody goes to Weld County to get their hair cut and then comes back,
Yeah.
nobody's going to bother them.
Nope.
It's not going to happen, but they're still breaking the law. And the
Right.
law is messed up. And for goody two-shoes like Kathleen Chandler here, she will never want to break the law because
Right.
she'll go to hell for it.
Right.
People like me don't mind that.
Right. Going to hell.
Going to hell.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, the parties
look,
are a lot better.
I work in hell. It's called the Independence Institute.
That's a
I
good
work
point.
in hell.
Well, here's a real reason, because I know people like you and you are going to be in heaven, and I am not spending eternity with you people.
I am going to
Oh.
get there. It's going to make the 2018 election look like a cakewalk. I do agree with you, and I think that's part of the problem with these oppressive orders, especially when they impact things like churches, right? I mean, if you have a church that says, I'm going to follow the law even though I disagree with it, and my congregation doesn't get to come together to worship, how do you get that back? How do you make that go away down the road? You can't, and I don't disagree with any of those things. The question is, for right now, the vehicles to undo those orders don't exist. No meaningful change can take place through the court system right now. We are stuck with really the will and whim of a single human being on the planet Earth, and that's Governor Jared Polis. That has to scare the bejesus out of you. It scares me. And
But
frankly,
even
I'd say
before
the
that-
same thing if it was Bill Owens or anyone else.
But even before that, though, it wasn't just Polis. I gave Polis a lot of credit for resisting the calls to close down the state. And you had the
Well, no, out of there.
you had the state,
CDPHE.
yeah, and you also had the Tri-County Health Department, a bunch of unelected
Yep.
bureaucrats shutting down. All right, so let me recap because the Scotch is going to kick in before I know it.
I think I'm ahead of you, by the way, but that's all right.
You're more of a man than I am, so I'm not surprised by that.
I'm less. We discovered that
Yeah.
I'm less.
So there's no way to really do a class action lawsuit, or there's no way to get injunctive relief. And by the time we do get something, we'll be past this legally. At the same time, we're left with a precedent that it's okay to kind of break these laws, but they're willy-nilly laws. I mean, I am seeing such potential damage in the future if there was a real crisis. This is not a real crisis. I'm being tender for people who've been struck by it and families that hurt by it, but it's not that we're missing food. It's not that we're missing
Right.
money at this point. Talk to me in a year.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, we could do something crazy like inter the Japanese or something.
Yeah, exactly.
In a real emergency situation. Now that I'm thinking about it, there's someone else I'd call in my Rolodex for a question like this. because he'll know the person if it's not him. But John Anderson is a fantastic attorney, and he would have some thoughts on this. I don't want to discourage people from thinking about going to the courts. I just want to discourage people from having optimism that the courts are going to save them from this, because I don't believe that.
I think that's a wonderful way to do it. Let's grab a few more of these Zoomers. Hey, Zoomers, put your hand up there. Let's talk to Mark Allen. Hey, Mark, tell me, what are you drinking tonight? Mike, I'm sorry, Mike. Michael Allen.
Mark is his stage name.
Mark is his stage name. Michael Allen, what are you drinking tonight? I know you're there. Turn off your mic. There you are.
Talking to me. Yeah. Hey, George, how are you doing? Michael Allen down in the 4th JD.
Oh, sweet goodness. This is the Michael Allen, candidate for district attorney for the 4th Judicial District and a fantastic prosecutor down there in Colorado Springs.
Really?
Thanks for the plug, George.
Do any of you do you always have to say good things about one another?
On camera mostly,
Yeah,
but
okay.
off camera, I will tell you about Michael Allen. I mean, I don't know what he's got going on off camera there, but my guess is it requires a lighter. No, I'm kidding. I don't know if that's true. I made that up. Nice jersey. Is that from are they accredited anymore?
They're probably the national champion in basketball this season, George.
Oh, if there were, yeah.
I mean,
it'll all be on Nintendo, but
they did finish the season ranked number 1. I would just know.
We hoops, and I think that's how they give the trophy. They just say, if you're ranked number 1 at the end of the season, we're just going to bequeath it to you. What's going on, man? How are things down there?
They're fantastic. Hey, I'm going to be driving up to Denver this weekend, and I'm going to pass through your jurisdiction.
Oh, boy.
What are the limits? How egregious does somebody have to get before you're going to prosecute them for violating a stay-at-home order?
On an unrelated issue, what is your license plate number and make and model of your car?
I feel like that could incriminate me, George. Come on.
That's right, because it's a Prius. I get it.
Exactly.
You're very, very Greg Brophy in that way. Yeah, it would have to be something I really can't foresee. Like I read a story out of Larimer County where a guy got picked up ostensibly on one of these public health order violations, but it turns out he ended up like tussling with the cops. And it's like, if you attack the police, they're going to grab you for that. It isn't the public health order. It's really difficult for me to envision the situation in which, and let me tell you something else we've done. Maybe you guys have done this down there. I have an agreement with all my sheriffs that before they scratch out a ticket for a standalone public health order violation, the last thing they will do before they pull the trigger on that is to call our office and have a conversation with us about, is this the direction we really want to go? Is there any other alternative? I've never even had that call. That's because law enforcement in the 18th, man, these men and women do great things. They get it. They see the big picture.
Yeah, that's exactly the way it is down here too, is that I can't envision any of our law enforcement professionals going out on a limb on something like that. It would be just outrageous.
We're not Hawaii, you know?
Yeah. But understand what's bothering me here, lawyers. And you
don't say it with such a tone in your voice, John. Come on.
What I'm hearing from you lawyers,
yeah,
not that there's anything wrong with that, is that I am left to believe that my liberties are now at your discretion. That you're saying, the cops, they're good guys. They might toss us on as an extra thing. And the sheriffs, they're good guys. And we DAs, we're good guys. So we're using our discretion with this. Pardon me, you guys might be nice guys, but I don't want to give you people,
yeah,
that's what I said.
Yeah,
I don't want to give you people the power to have that at all. That I should be at the mercy of your discretion scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, I don't like
especially
it
any Kansas fans.
No, that's a competency issue that we'll have to take up on the campaign trail. I don't disagree with you on that either. I don't want that authority. I don't want that discretion. I think we need to have a serious look at what we have turned over to the public health department once an emergency is declared, because it's pretty sweeping discretion. I mean, if you remember what took place in Douglas County, you had 3 county commissioners appoint onto that health board 3 of the 9 members, 3 members for each of the 3 counties. They called those members and said, do not vote for that order. And all 3 of them said, don't care what you say, we're going to do it anyway. Right. So we've created a vehicle by which there's no accountability for people making decisions that provide all this discretion for someone to issue an order that causes you to have that same bad taste in your mouth.
But you understand my larger point, which is leaving it to discretion of good people. Law needs to be built around bad people. you know, if all men were angels, we wouldn't need you guys.
Right.
So that's what concerns me about this.
John, isn't that true of everything? Isn't that true of every violation? Like if Michael had called up and said, hey, I'm thinking about driving through your jurisdiction. I'm probably going to go about 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. Where do you guys draw the line about when you'll prosecute someone for speeding? And I were to say, I can't imagine anyone pulling you over for less than 20 over. Couldn't you make the same argument? Like that shouldn't.
If I were as narrow-minded as you, I would make that argument. But what I would say, however, I would say something to this. There's a difference between a misdemeanor of going over the speed limit. It's a whole nother thing when you take on a constitutional issue of freedom to travel. When you take on the constitutional issue of right to assemble, right to worship. You know, these are the things. This is damn huge stuff.
It is big.
And that's why I'm just so taken by this, that people's complacency on this. And part of it is, and I take this as the compliment, is that we trust you guys. We know you guys. We know George is there. We know the cop. We know the sheriff. Yeah. We elected him. That'll be okay. But remember, we had a system here that put 120,000 Japanese Americans into concentration camps.
Yep.
Things happen here.
But look, if I make a mistake or Michael gets elected and makes a mistake, we're accountable.
When I get elected, George.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I could be recalled. I could lose at the next election. I mean, at least there's some mechanism to say, I don't like the way you've exercised your discretion. And I think what I led with when you asked me about whether or not to enforce these at all is that, to some extent, I'm in this weird position of this. What's the greater good thing? Is it the greater good for me to say as a matter of principle, hey, people of the 18th, don't worry about it. There is no vehicle, no circumstance by which I will ever prosecute a violation of this, knowing that the fallback is to send that discretion up the road to someone who doesn't see the Constitution the way you and I do, doesn't see freedom the way you and I do, doesn't know a damn thing about my jurisdiction, never lived there, never worked there? Or is it to say, I will put myself in a position to exercise my discretion over any of these things that come up? And so far, by the way, worked out pretty damn well.
So far, it's worked out pretty damn well because we all have food in our stomachs. When that changes, then we'll see. Hey, good luck on the election. Appreciate it, Michael. Let's
go Buffs.
Go Buffs. Let's talk to Zerblatt, because how do you not talk to somebody named Zerblatt? Zerblatt, tell me, hey. What are you drinking?
I wanted to. This is Sven Larsson, by the way, from Wyoming.
Oh, that's right.
I wanted to make Klingon Warnog, but I don't speak Klingon, so I'm stuck with German beer, Warsteiner.
Given all the fascism that's going on right now, I think it's a good call.
Yeah.
Hey, I have a question for the good lawyer about Michigan. I am worried about and I'm really glad you're having this discussion. I am worried about the boundaries of this. In Michigan, as you know, the governor has gone into doing things with her emergency powers that the legislature has now tried to rein in. Mm-hmm. They're putting some oversight onto that. And since I'm an economist, so I have absolutely no clue about the law. But my question is, what happens if the governor, under a draconian scenario, were to say, for public health reasons, we're going to have to shut down the legislature, we're going to have to shut down the courts. There are no longer any checks and balances. Are there any such boundaries on these emergency powers? I don't know about, Michigan, Colorado, federally. Could you give some reassurance that bad things can't happen beyond this?
I think it's worth noting that overwhelmingly, these orders are coming locally. That is, our local jurisdictions and our governors. As much as people want to yell about Trump, right. Trump can only close down things outside of the United States, stuff coming in and certain orders about immigration, things like that. Really what every American is feeling is the result of mayors and governors and the bureaucracies that were built to serve them.
100% true. I agree with you. I mean, to some extent, there's a revival of federalism in a way here too. But to answer Zerblatt, thank you, sir, the question. I don't know about the Michigan law, but here in Colorado, the legislature has the ability to override the governor. This order just can't exist in perpetuity without the legislator's acquiescence to some extent through inaction. They could take action, but here's the problem. You know, elections have consequences. We have turned over every lever of state government over to a single party. And I don't think you should expect that party to stand up against the governor, even if they thought he was doing things inappropriately. Now, look, we can disagree about some of the decisions the governor's made. I think he's in a very difficult position. I like some of the decisions he's made. Others, I think he's turned over such arbitrary power to people. I mean, for instance, Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, CDPHE, when he declares that emergency order and says, I'm going to declare certain businesses to be critical and certain things to be critical, and then turns it over to CDPHE. CDPHE comes along and they sneak in words into his order and cut and paste them.
It's very similar to what Congress does when they create a law and then they hand it over to a bureaucracy.
Oh my gosh.
Which then over time, like the EPA or OSHA or whomever, interprets and creates law in themselves. I'll tell you what, thanks for that call. I'll tell you what, let's go to one more call with Chris. And then I want to bring in Randall O'Toole, who's our transportation specialist on this, to bring up another point. Chris, tell me, Chris R., what are you drinking? What is it?
Bottle. It's the same bottle of tequila.
Every time I talk to you, you're holding the same bottle. I'm hoping it's a different bottle.
Yeah, like has it gone down at all?
I'm working.
Look, I'll be honest.
I'm working. I'm working too.
This is actually Lysol. I'm feeling a lot.
I got three things. Three.
God, that's a straight line.
So for George, I'm in Gunnison County, and we had a second homeowner ban here for a couple weeks, and we've had our first lawsuits filed.
And what happened?
And it just started. It's based on the 5th and 14th Amendments, and we're expecting a lot more.
Who brought forward the lawsuit?
And who's it against?
It's against our public health director and our commissioners.
Yep. So the district court where that got filed has, I think, 90 days.
Yeah.
To make a decision or to hold a hearing on this thing. That's crazy. 90 days from now? Where are we?
Right. And we're expecting a lot more. So, you were talking about class action suits. I just see our county government getting bogged down in fending off multiple suits. I don't know. Yes?
It's not a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing. And I'm glad somebody's challenging it, particularly in Gunnison County, where it's so egregious to tell out-of-state people they can't come to their own damn property.
Crazy. It
is crazy. And it gets back to my point. Well, if you were there, I guess we could trust it. But you're not everywhere. And therefore, we need laws that protect us.
I think we need to revisit the laws that we've used to accomplish a lot of these things. But the scariest place for me to go, and it's not because I don't have libertarian values. It's
no, you don't.
Oh no, I do. It's because my concern is if we get to the point where we can just each individually decide, I hereby declare this law to be unconstitutional, and therefore I shall not follow it. Then why have things written down on paper? If everybody to themselves gets to make that declaration, why have any laws? Why not just say, do your best?
Watch out. There's a libertarian question in there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when I see sheriffs saying and clarifying, these are the laws, since I have discretion, my discretion says yes on this and no on that. It gives clarity. We now know who that person is. We know whether to vote for him again or vote him out of office.
Is that what you want, though, for that position? Because then the next sheriff that comes along that maybe takes a different approach. We think that the gun magazine thing is ridiculous, right? I mean, first off, doesn't add a single bit of safety anywhere it's ever been used. And that's true here, too. We think it's unconstitutional. It's ridiculous. If sheriffs start saying willy-nilly, I refuse to enforce that because the next person that comes along and wants to go over the top with the enforcement, what do we say to them?
Well, how can you go over the top with enforcement? That is, if he's enforcing the law, then he's enforcing the law. So he can't enforce more than the
discretion. Law. No. Well, what if there's some other law that we like that helps protect us and we say we don't like it?
But you did the same thing when we started this conversation. You said, I'm not pushing this and I'm not pushing that. I might add it on if somebody's doing something else. So discretion in law enforcement is always a key. There is nothing wrong with announcing what your discretion is beforehand.
Well, it's one thing to exercise discretion on a case-by-case basis. It is another thing to say whole cloth, I refuse to enforce this law. I'll give you another example. The DA up in Denver announces, I will never, ever, never, under any circumstances, ever seek the death penalty, when it was the law on the books. Is that okay? Is that okay to make a blanket announcement? I refuse to enforce this law. Can you imagine if a DA would have said, I think hate crime sentence enhancers are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I think an assault is an assault, whether they punch you because of the color of your hair or the color of your skin doesn't matter. My God, people would be winging themselves out of the Capitol on the Democrat side of the building saying, you don't get to make that call.
So now Democrats decide what we should be doing?
No, but it's not discretion if you say, I refuse to enforce under all circumstances.
But
discretion is case by case.
But it is honesty. And I will take that honesty. So that Denver DA, whether he says it or not, will never bring a death penalty 100%, case.
Yep.
So why not be honest with us and say it up front? That is a good thing for him to do, not a bad thing.
It's I disagree. And I'll
say
this.
You're wrong.
I appreciate that she
and I'm not drunk enough.
I appreciate that she campaigned on it, and the voters said this is what we want. But is that where we're going with this?
So Chris said she had 3 things, and I think I only heard 2.
I think we've heard half. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say you already see it with red flag laws. I mean, there's sheriffs that say we're not going to enforce it.
That's right.
Okay. So what you're saying is in Gunnison County, I have a travel restriction. If I leave more than 24 hours, I have to quarantine for 7 days when I come back. So let me ask you.
Is that real?
Yeah, that's real. So if I get up Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, I leave and I drive to say Boulder. Okay,
hold on.
Boulder.
Is there another train coming the opposite direction at 45
miles an hour?
I can't do math like this.
Okay. Yeah. So my friend in Boulder, though, is under still house arrest. Can he leave for necessary reasons for us to go have lunch in Weld County? And then he goes back to his home in Boulder County. And I drive home about 4 o'clock and I make it under the deadline for the 24 hours.
Right,
I'm good.
Let me answer that by pouring another one of these.
The question is, who's the father? I don't know. I don't really know.
All right.
It's such a great question. It's such a complicated question. My answer is it will never turn into
Just think about what you just said. That
I know.
that it's here he is. A DA, the guy who prosecuted one of the most famous mass murder cases in Colorado history, a guy who ran for AG, is saying, I don't know. That is terrifying to me.
Don't know.
Yeah.
All right.
Don't know, but what I tell you is, in my not knowing, I'm 100% confident that will never turn into a criminal charge. I just don't see that ever. Even in Gunnison.
Awesome.
All right.
I just don't see it happening.
All right. We're gonna keep rolling here.
Last thing. Ready?
Yes.
When are you running for Congress?
Oh. Oh my gosh. Washington, D.C. Boy.
Oh God. All right. So
that's a tough one.
Let me translate. This is where a politician just says, oh, I don't know if I'd even want to go there. It basically.
No, I don't want to demur that way. Yeah. I will say this. Do I want to keep serving the public sector? I would like to. I think I have more to give. Boy, I'd sure love to have stayed in Colorado. I mean, that's my goal, right? I want to stay here. My kids are here. I got 4 kids that I know of. My wife's got her business. That got a little chuckle off camera here. I would like to stay here and serve
What's
my
funny
community.
Is you actually think those 4 kids are yours.
Yeah. My wife's now, if she heard that, she would now use that against me.
She should.
All right. I don't know. I really don't know the answer, but thank you. And there's redistricting in 2022, so who knows?
Who knows? I'll tell you what, I don't know if Chris. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris.
Let's drink. Is Randall O'Toole with us? I tell you what. So Randall is one of my favorite people in the world because he's one of those guys who speaks the truth about growth control and transit, and he has this god awful, ridiculous Colonel Sanders necktie that he wears. So Randall, I don't even know if you drink. But if you are drinking, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking stronger ginger beer.
What is stronger ginger beer? What is stronger ginger beer?
It's stronger than regular ginger beer. You can get it regular, extra strong, and stronger. And I think stronger is the strongest.
And I'm assuming you are sitting from your palatial estates out in Oregon somewhere?
That's right. Central Oregon.
Beautiful. Looks beautiful.
Let me lead you in on this one, and your connection is a little fuzzy.
It is.
Randall, very early on this, made the comment that, you know what's really bad for COVID? Mass transit. Not only is mass transit bad for traffic, bad for poor people,
Budgets.
it's bad for budgets, bad for the environment, good for bond dealers and insiders, but now it's bad for COVID. You wrote something for us and for the Cato Institute. What did you find? What's the main point?
Well, there's a lot of research that shows that the best way to infect a lot of people with any kind of virus is mass transit. There was a 2011 study that found that people who rode mass transit were 6 times more likely to have acute respiratory infections than people who didn't. There was a
Oh, he's frozen.
He's
I think he was
frozen.
going to say syphilis too.
He wasn't going to say syphilis.
Oh,
Yeah.
he wasn't?
No. See, what's great about this is I tell you what, Randall, we will come back to you.
This is the segment of the show called Complete the Sentence.
Complete the sentence. We can see you, we can't hear you, and you're not much to look at. So we'll keep going with that. I tell you what, let's talk to Deborah next, and we'll come back to Randall. Deborah, tell me, what are you drinking? Do we have Deborah? Debbie, are you there?
Come on, Debbie.
Okay, I'm finally unmuted. Thank you.
Oh, there you go.
Yay.
So sadly, I am drinking some white wine
There's something
with
wrong that.
peaches.
You
I
could've
know,
said
it's
wine
lame.
cooler. Yeah, that's not
I
lame.
know,
Not lame.
but I went with what I had in the house, John.
Fruit's good for you.
Yes, it
You know what?
is.
Yeah, this is why you need a man to run out of the house and buy real booze. Bring home food. Bring home liquor.
Absolutely. And John, I couldn't agree with you more. Absolutely.
Or a real man would
So-
at least bring it and drop it at your doorstep.
That too.
Doorbell did
So-
with alcohol. That's great.
Yeah. So good evening, John and George. George, I'm super impressed on your workout.
Oh, thank
Congrats
you.
on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Screw him.
So
Screw him.
my
Being 30 pounds overweight and bald is what chicks really want.
I'll be
Yes.
back when I'm heavy.
No. So, hey, I have 2 questions. The first question is, John, can you tell us what your part-time gig is up to and how is that?
All right, that's kind of embarrassing.
George.
As a adult film star, business has been
No,
so,
George,
Oh.
your part-time gig.
Oh.
Uh,
As an adult film star, I
oh my gosh. Okay, next question.
part-time gig as DA or anything else?
which gig are we talking about?
I'm talking about your Colorado National Guard gig.
Oh yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
that's great, by the way. And I'm an 06. I'm a colonel. I'm our first military judge, although we're still in the process.
You're a military
Can you
judge.
believe it, buddy? Can you believe it? In the process of
Do you realize
finishing up
the whole George Brauchler fascist image has just gelled for me completely?
Hey, listen, this was a great conversation with the TAG, the Adjutant General, Major General Lowe, where he called me into his office at one point. He goes, you know what I think we need is we need a military judge for this justice system. I said, I agree, sir. And he said, we think you'd be great for it. I said, I totally disagree, sir. I really want to be an advocate. I want to be in on the commander's briefs. I want to, be in the formations. I don't want to be siloed by myself. And he just nods, and he's such a great guy. And he nods, and he goes, anyway, we really think you should be the military. I said, oh my God, you could have saved me the embarrassment of that whole 5-minute thing if you'd have just come out and led
How many
with,
times in
you're going to do
how
it.
many times in your courtroom have there been the you can't handle the truth?
Now, not yet, because this is the missing piece. We are gelling now the final rules and regulations on how this court is going to work. And there's no playbook for it because we're not bound by the UCMJ because that's at the federal level.
I
That's
don't know what that
Title
is because
10 Uniform Code of Military
Thank
Justice.
you.
Yeah.
But the Colorado Code of Military Justice, and here's an interesting thing in the law, whatever decision comes out of my courtroom is directly appealable to the Supreme Court. And no one was more shocked than I was about
Really?
that other than the Supreme Court themselves. When I told a couple of the justices, they were like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh yeah, it goes from me to you. And they're like, so we're
That's
trying to
wild.
trying to figure out that piece right now.
All right, so how you're in the reserves.
National Guard. Yep.
How much time is that?
So 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks out of the year, but that's fake because one of the things that I've done is I'm a legal advisor also down to.
Well, Deborah's clapping over this.
She knows.
Because she's obviously in it.
It's fake. That 2 days a week.
Fake news.
Totally fake, especially during things like this. But because I'm also a legal advisor down at NORAD Northcom, down in Building 2 at Peterson, anytime there is a God-made or man-made disaster, they'll bring us down there for a certain number of days working in the FOC, Future Operations Center, and all these other things to try to figure out how to make legal some of how money gets from here to there and what troops can do, how you use. It's called DSCA, the Defense Support of Civil Authorities. And then on top of that, I have
You're boring me.
Hold on. There's cool stuff here. There's something called the Defense Institute for International Legal Studies, and they travel across the planet.
Only adding on to it.
They travel across the planet Earth, training foreign militaries on the rule of law.
Oh, really?
Law of war, all that. So I just started to get into that before we shut down the planet. The last place I went, January, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, to train some of the Malaysian Navy. No joke.
Train them in rule of law
and the law of war and human rights law, because
that is fascinating.
Before we give a foreign country aid in the form of, let's say, drones or any other training, we hook on to that, shoehorn into that agreement. You will go through this kind of human rights law training. And so
that you can ignore it later.
Well, I'll be honest with you. It was during the time, God, I shouldn't be saying this, but while I'm over there and we're training, it was when the president came out and said, and another thing, if you don't knock it off talking to a Middle East country, we'll just bomb your mosques. We'll just do it. And we'll do it because you like them so much. And it was like questions from the Malaysian Navy. I thought you said we couldn't do that. And I'm like, so anyway, anyway. Funny stuff.
Hey, I do actually, honestly, for both you and Deborah, thank you for doing that in the Guard. It's
Debbie's done far more than I have. So,
but it's we're there. You're there when we need you, and I'm grateful.
And sometimes when we're not. But what have you been up to, Debbie? What have you been up to in your gig?
She's drunk. She's obviously drunk. She can't hear us.
No, I was muted by the host. So thanks, John. So we have just been preparing, our soldiers if we were activated, and we did our first virtual drill ever with the field artillery, as you can imagine.
A virtual drill?
Yeah. I had an NCODP with 70 soldiers, almost this size, doing an NCODP, just trying to stay engaged and stay in contact with our soldiers throughout the state of Colorado. So that's what we're doing. Our biggest challenge now is that we're going to have to go against the active duty folks on Fort Carson to share ranges, because we've all been compacted in this situation where we can't train for the last 2 months. So both the National Guard and active duty, because of social distancing. So I'm boring, John. I'm sorry.
Welcome to my love life. My love life is called social distancing. Thank you.
Cheers.
All right, I tell you what. Cheers. Let's see if we can get back to Randall O'Toole in his wonderful abode up in Oregon. By the way, when you zoom in, we'll turn on and off your mics for you. Don't worry. Randall, are you back with us? We had a hard time hearing you before.
Well, if I turn off my video, I'm hoping that you can hear me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Doesn't mean I'm listening to you.
Well, how much did you hear the last time I was talking?
You went right down to people are inside mass transit and the rate of infection does X, and then you dropped.
All right. Well, a 2011 study found that people were 6 times more likely to have acute respiratory infections if they rode mass transit than if they didn't. A 2018 study called Mass Transit, an effective accelerator of influenza infections. And I thought, oh, at least it's effective at something. And of course, early this month, a study out of China found that outside of the home, infections were eight times more likely to take place in mass transit than in any other venue, any other public forum.
More so than a basketball game, a football
Bathhouse?
game, a bathhouse, a
Absolutely.
bar.
Absolutely. It was like 100.
Funny how I went to a baseball game and you went to a bathhouse, but
Well, I thought we were going the same way. We were like, and then you ended up going sports. So.
It was like
There goes that congressional
108
run.
outbreaks of COVID on mass transit and 7 in sports facilities and other entertainment forums.
For those who might not know,
So-
Randall is, I believe, the nation's best expert on mass transit and urban studies. And so, Randall, let me run this by you. It seems to me this is the perfect time for organizations like RTD to completely rework their model. This is the time for them to switch to a model where instead of building ridiculous transit systems made for 100 years ago or even 150 years ago, that they actually give money directly to transit-dependent people and allow them to choose the mode that they need: Uber, a taxi, a bus at full cost, maybe even, God forbid, buy their own car, and to use some sort of managed lanes to give those who share a ride a competitive advantage. It seems like now is the perfect time for the great American disruption in mass transit. Agreed?
I think he said syphilis.
I think so too. Since I can't hear you, Randall, I'll have our tech guys work on this. Randall going once.
It's the strong ginger.
It is a strong ginger. It must be the strong
I feel like
ginger.
that's a muscly redhead.
He's unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
There, oh yeah. Now I can hear you.
Okay. Well, those are all good ideas, John, but they're not going to come from RTD. RTD has got a model where they make money from the federal government and local taxpayers to build expensive rail lines. They build a big empire, and their CEO gets paid over $300,000 a year, probably. That's typical for CEOs of rail transit agencies. And they have a lot of union employees. And so they have to please the contractors, they have to please the union employees, and they get huge subsidies. And, you know, transit has got such a halo thanks to tremendous amounts of propaganda that the transit industry said to Congress, well, we need $13 billion. Oh no, make it 25. And so Congress gave them $25 billion, and now they're working up to say, hey, we're going to need another $25 billion. And as long as Congress is giving them that kind of money to run transit and infect more people, then why should they bother to change their model and start talking about things like transit or transportation vouchers?
Oh, well, as
that
you just
create
said,
any union jobs, that doesn't create any contractors' profits.
But as you have said before, Randall, they're killing people. Randall was the guy who wrote up the study on what Fast Tracks was going to do. Among his conclusions was it was going to cost multiples of what they said. It will bring in less revenue. It won't reduce traffic at all. And one that people scoffed at, that it will kill people. And lo and behold, Fast Tracks has killed more people per passenger mile than just about anything else.
What?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. Take.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And now it's giving people COVID. You know, if there was ever a time to do it. Hey, Randall, tell folks, if they want to read some of your stuff, where's the best place to go? And next time when we do this, we'll get a better video hookup, because I want to dive into this more.
The best place is my blog. It's called The Anti-Planner. Just Google Anti-Planner, and it's the first thing on the list. Or go to ti.org and click on Anti-Planner. I've been posting weekly briefs on these subjects. And there's brief number 47 is particularly good on COVID and things like that, but there's been several more too.
Randall, what you do is amazing. So we'll fix this connection. Maybe we'll do it in the next one. Thank you for what you do. I tell you what, I see Sam Staley there and Sam, if it's the Sam I think of, he might add on to this conversation. So Sam, I need to know, what are you drinking?
Yes, I am drinking really hard stuff, Mountain Dew. And you'll notice that it's actually hidden because my neighbors they really get upset if they see me watching or drinking Mountain Dew. So
oh, really?
I actually got that. Yeah, no, it's the real hard stuff. So
there's corn mash inside. Don't worry. George is very disappointed in you.
It's like, come on.
Yeah.
What do you have for us, Sam?
Yeah, so I got a question for you because I'm in Florida. I'm in Tallahassee, and I'm at Florida State, and I've been watching what we've been doing in this state pretty closely. And so I think our governor has been very prudent, in large part because he's left a lot of discretion to the local level on how to sort of manage this. And I'm curious because I've been listening to your conversation. Sounds like Colorado is there any real sense in Colorado of looking at different ways that states have tried to take less draconian approaches to this? Or is this, like most states seem to be, just very insulated and sort of just looking only at our own state?
Well, every state should look at its own state. The idea of federalism is just that. We have 50 laboratories to check and see. And that's why it'll be interesting to see what happens in Michigan versus Wyoming, where there's no close down at all. And Wyoming, where I think, Florida, where your governor, I think, has done a superb job trying to make those balances. You know, we're now at the point where we're starting to creep out of it. What I want to see is, one, us unleash the economy as best as possible, free society again, so that this is a blip and not a depression. And then secondly, I want to see that we're going to try to do something to prevent these abuses from happening in the future. Clarify this. And it's conservatives have to take a lot of the blame here. We, the royal we, were okay after 9/11 with the Patriot Act and all sorts of other legislation that gave away our rights. And it was a lot of law and order kind of guys who loved the Patriot Act and loved the spying that happened on it. And I'm worried about it. I hope that COVID, and I'm in a minority here, I hope that COVID wakes us up and says, we need to look at our emergency powers laws much more carefully.
I do think that the governor could score huge reelect me points if, when this is over, he advocates for a change in the law that would call into a question or call into check more of the decisions that he made, and maybe even have a task force to relook at the amount of discretion that he was given. I know that seems counterintuitive, but I think that would be genius on his part to take a look at that. I worry about the fact that, Sam, you ask, where are we looking for guidance? We've just now hooked our wagon to California, Washington, and Oregon.
Yeah.
So we're looking to the West, which in the past we might have said right on. And now I'm like, oh my goodness.
We've done that before with emission standards. We're now at at Gavin Newsom's discretion. Whatever he chooses for emission standards are our emission standards in Colorado. Same thing with zero emission vehicles, low emission vehicles. It's nuts. So the EPA, we're not the United States of America. We're the United States of California.
The EPA came out with their new rule that said, hey, look, we're going to change the way that we evaluate and roll out these emission standards to give back more discretion to the states to meet these things on a regular basis. And our Attorney General said, oh, no, I'm going to sue you for that. We don't want that. We want California standards, and please don't do anything to interfere with that. And I thought, okay, that's it then. We are going to be California.
Yeah, if only somebody beat him in the election, we wouldn't be worried about that kind of crap, would we, George?
Listen, I did 99% of the job.
Hey, I tell you what. Well, on that, one of the things we can do, something I want to announce, people get our email know this.
Yeah.
We are now pushing a legal change. We want to ignite the economy. We think it's a big idea to have a little tax decrease
for everybody.
For everybody,
you're not just picking people to give it to. It's
going to the Independence Institute, along with Jerry Sonnenberg, the state senator, put forward a proposition to the state board, title board, which got through. We're now going to try to petition this to lower our flat tax rate from 4.63 to 4.55.
Boom.
To help fuel this recovery. And I'm thrilled. We're going to see if we can get this on, but we need to get people to keep and invest and spend and save more of their own money.
That's right. There's a competing measure, as you know, which seeks to blow up the part of Tabor that it keeps us at our flat tax and tries to create a little bit of
lo and behold, we thought about that as well. And we thought that people should have a choice between a progressive income tax, which I'm sure they're going to call a middle class tax cut.
Of course.
And a real tax cut. And so that's why we're very excited putting that out. In fact, I'm going to open up my I'm just drinking beer now.
Celebratory
beer.
for that.
See, well, let's keep going with these Zoom calls. And by the way, we'll unmute you when it's time. So don't worry about muting and unmuting. We'll take care of that. Let's talk to Abby. Abby, what are you drinking?
I am drinking State 38 bourbon.
What is State? I've never heard of State 38.
It's got to be us.
Are we the 38th state?
It's wonderful. Actually, the school I work at.
Is Colorado the 38th state? I need to check that.
The school I work at,
you broke up on us there, Abby.
So I help bottle and they keep us sane. That's a good place. I actually have questions for Randall if he's still around. Is that possible? Or
I tell you what, I am so much smarter than Randall that if you ask me, I'll answer it for Randall, and I'll get it right.
Okay. Well, so my question is, I hate mass transit in Colorado because it doesn't go anywhere. It's useless. It's expensive. Like, there are so many reasons not to like it here. But I've also spent a significant amount of time in Paris, and I can't imagine not having mass transit in a massive city like that. And whether or not it's privately or publicly funded, how do you make the argument against mass transit in a very, very large city?
Let me take a shot at that, Abby, because as being the former chairman of the board of RTD, here's the difference. When I was on the board of RTD, we had about 2.3 million people, or 2.5 million. Now it's about 3 million people plus in the Denver metro area and growing. And that was 23 or 24,000 square miles. I'm trying to remember. It went from literally the continental divide all the way past Aurora. Wow. Paris, by contrast, didn't have, I think it was actually 2,400 square miles. Paris, by contrast, had the same amount of population, but not in 2,400 square miles, but in 24 square miles. So when that kind of density, lo and behold, that type of transit actually works. Go to Hong Kong, go to Tokyo, rail certainly works. But when the Federal Department of Transportation says that Western cities and places like Denver are the wrong places for rail-based transit, maybe we ought to listen. What we need are road systems that allow people to get through traffic quickly. And RTD hates that, because when you put up tracks, only RTD and their empire can use those tracks. When you put up bus lanes, RTD can use them, you can use them, Uber can use them, and Lyft can use them, and taxi cabs and school buses.
So I agree entirely that it doesn't make sense to do it here or in a city like Denver, but it does make sense in Paris. I think it brings up an interesting question of what's the trade-off for viral spread in mass transit in larger cities. And some of those studies are probably done in larger cities where more people are taking mass transit. Here in Denver, it's so often empty that how can you catch anything anyway? There's no one there.
You're safer on the train.
Like
I want a social distance, so I'm going to ride RTD.
6 feet.
That says it all.
So I just wonder exactly how that argument works if you take a large transit system that is effective in a large city. So I don't know, that doesn't have to be answered, but just kind of a thought for that. And my other question is, how do schools play into viral spread? If mass transit is the top, what about schools, and how do you see viruses spreading there? Asking as a teacher.
Well, since I cut school a lot, I can guarantee you there's a lot of good social.
You're safer.
You know, really, you're not more crowded than you are when you're on the school bus. When you're in the school, there's a bit more space there. It will be interesting to see. I don't have the right answer. I will ask Randall about that. Keep on drinking that, because that looks good. Let's keep going with these Zoom calls, because I want to make sure we get into them. Abby, it's always great to see you. Let's talk to John Henderson. John Henderson, tell me, what are you drinking?
Well, I made my way through Jared Polis's 34-page single-spaced order this morning, or at least I tried to. So I had a choice between shooting myself and drinking Jack Daniels on ice. I've elected to go to Jack Daniels on ice.
All day.
Seemed like the wisest decision to me.
What was in this order, by the way? This was the order to partially open us up, right?
I think that's right.
And what stuck out to you, John?
What stuck out for me is how anyone in a small business is supposed to decipher at the margins whether they're in or out. I mean, I hate to be hyperbolic about that, but I'm not sure that either Adolf Hitler or Joseph Stalin ever got up in the morning and issued 34-page single-spaced orders directing the citizens what they were supposed to do on any given day.
Well, here's the other part of it that I think makes it really tough. Instead of having kind of guidelines, which is, hey, let's be careful. Let's, through social pressure, make sure there's distancing, that people are wearing their masks, whatever. Whatever the governor puts out today is going to change in a week. It's going to change in 3 days after that. And therefore, by the time any small businessman even gets a handle on it, it's completely moot.
Yeah, I think the other problem too is you got people drafting these things, especially at the Department of Health level, who I don't think know how the law works and that words have meaning. And so the gap between should and shall is critical. So one of the things this new law, this 34-page single-space thing, does is it actually makes our job harder, because what it says
your job as a district attorney.
As district attorney, because now it says as a critical government agency, and we are, it says you shall conduct daily temperature tests of your employees. So in this lightened up environment, it is actually more onerous for us to conduct business than it was before the order, because I'm looking around my staff. I got 232 employees. They're great at things like IT, central services, investigations, and prosecution. Who in the hell am I going to assign with a thermometer to swab people's foreheads or ear canals or whatever on that daily basis? Because that's a shall, not a should, not a recommended practice.
It's what
a
happens
shall.
when you take. We all have our different areas of expertise, our different areas that we know better than anybody else. Yep. And these health guys, their job is to promote good health. A business guy's job is to make money, get people employed. And so and a politician's job, the governor's job, is to weigh those two. And over the last 6 weeks, only one part has been heard. And so to say that, here's the analogy I use. I did it in a column. I used to write a column for the Denver Post, by the way.
You still write columns.
It was really good. Now it's at the Gazette, where more people read, I think. God, I would really hate anybody who replaced me at the Post. I would find that to be, I don't know how to put that.
Was that Krista Kafer? God,
I would find that. So Krista was there before.
Oh.
I would feel a sense of betrayal like I have never felt in my life if somebody took up that real estate. But what I wrote in the column was that if you let engineers make business decisions, well, then our power lines would be made out of gold, because gold is a much better conductor. That is the best way to run that. Yeah. And so if you let engineers make that decision, that's their decision. That's why you have somebody above them going, no, we have to balance this. And politicians are not always the best people to balance, because they're listening to this group. So I agree with exactly what you said.
The horrifying thing about where we're at now, and this feeds right into the progressive, playbook, is that the scariest words to hear from a politician anymore are experts, evidence-based, and best practices. Those three terms should cause anybody to be instantly skeptical about the next things that come out of someone's mouth, because those are terms that are used to stifle debate and discussion. They're to end scrutiny. If you hear, well, the experts say, it's like, well, that's it then. I mean, my God, it's the experts. I mean, who could possibly contradict the experts?
Well, so that's how what happened in the doctor's video this weekend out of Kern County, California. I listened to the whole video this weekend, and those guys were talking about actual statistics from Kern County, California, talking about New York City and 7 or 8 different countries in Europe. They had the statistics. They made an hour-long video. It was brilliant. 5.7 million viewers by the time that YouTube took it down yesterday, because it was contrary to World Health Organization
The experts.
guidelines. Wow.
All right, so now you're getting into a whole new thing about why these online platforms are the new form of censorship, which is why, if anything else, you need to get onto caucusroom.com and go to completecolorado.com and trust platforms where our views will not be taken out. Hey, thank you for that. Let's keep rolling with these Zoomers. And remember, we'll turn on and off your microphones. If you want to be part of the conversation, raise your hand in Zoom, not your physical hand, but the little thing on the bottom. Ari Armstrong has been writing some incredible stuff for Complete Colorado. He's one of our regular columnists. Ari, what are you drinking this time? And I hope it's something different because it's usually the same beer. When I say
have a question.
When I say the same beer, I'm calling you a wimp because I think it's actually the same physical beer.
No, I finished that last night, John. Tonight I'm drinking cheap red wine in a plastic bottle because
that's great.
I figure waste not waste. It's actually pretty good considering what it is.
You stole that from an airplane. I've done that too on the over, out of country flights. You get the free wine, so you take a bottle.
I like it out of the
I'm not traveling, and so I might as well drink up my travel stock for going camping or whatever.
Right.
So I'm not really doing. But no, I didn't actually have a question. I did before, but you kind of answered. My question was along the lines of what might we think about in terms of maybe reining in or thinking about that, the emergency powers down the road. And you've discussed that to some degree. I did like, since I'm on the line here, I liked you had an article out, George, about this distinction about
you like George's work better than mine? Is that what I'm hearing?
He did not say that out loud. He did not.
About deciding what a business's primary purpose was, as opposed to just whatever their not primary purpose is. I thought that was a really good, useful distinction in trying to think about some of the arbitrariness behind some of these orders.
That was that thing I was mentioning to John, that was not part of Governor Polis's order. It was, they cut and pasted his definition of a critical business and then snuck the word primarily in there so that now it gives them discretion to decide, like for Conn's, and that was part of that article. Conn's is this national chain that has 7 stores in Colorado, including serving Aurora. They have a much more forgiving credit line that they offer than Home Depot or Lowe's, so they have a different socioeconomic group that comes in and shops there. They sell laptops. They were flying off the shelves. They sell freezers, things to keep your food, while you're in this lockdown thing, all good to go. But the Department of Health came along and said, 65% of your business is furniture, therefore you're not critical. And the guy I talked to, guy named Philip Holt's like, well, where did you get those numbers? And they're like, that was just our determination. So therefore,
that was our determination.
He never knew where they got the numbers.
How do you not lose your crap when some technocrat comes in and says, our determination is your sales are mostly this?
I mean, it feels like it's a kind of a 65%. I'm sorry, you're close. What? So they just shut down all their stores.
Yes, Ari had a spectacular column on Complete Colorado about the change in media around this. The Post is taking it on the chin. Every paper is taking it on the chin. Yep. Broadcast media is taking it on the chin as well. However, when the campaign season comes in, they're going to be flush with Trump money and U.S. Senate candidate money. Ari, what's your prediction about the media? You wrote it in your.
I don't know, but I talked to 710 today, and they're having massive furloughs in radio too right now. So I don't know.
By those who don't know, I've been furloughed from my job of 22 years at KOA and KHOW. I'll be back in a few months. It's fine, and it's nice. I'm spending a little more time with my kids.
Yeah.
But I'm the backbencher who's always pinch hitting, and that's fine. But there are a lot of people who have worked there full time. This is their gig. They've been furloughed. It hurts.
That's all because the advertising dollars, I presume, are not there.
And this is the part that I love so much, is that while the folks in front of the cameras and the microphones and at the keypads at the Post are scaring us with all these terrific stories of COVID and adding to the panic, they have no frickin' idea that they're slicing their own throats because now they're chasing away their advertisers. Go ahead, Ari. I'm sorry.
Well, there is some good news, though, if you're a fan of news journalism, which is Larry Rickman over at the Colorado Sun, which disclosure, for a while I wrote a column there. he reports that their memberships, which is just people paying him money every month, is actually up 15% since the beginning of March. And so, people are really interested in the news, and their model is pretty much to get grants and then to have their readers pay them directly. And they're running a pretty lean and mean ship. And for them, it's working. And for them, there's some sort of relationship between people reading their stuff and them generating revenues for to pay their reporters. So I personally like that model, and I would like to see that sort of model expand, where they're not so reliant on advertisers. They're moving more toward voluntary contributions straight from readers. And I like the fact that they've
subscriptions. Used to be the Denver Post and the Rocky Mountain News.
Yeah.
Even online, whether it's talk radio or Channel 9. I mean, there's something of that. You're building an audience. You sell the advertisers.
Yeah, as a kid, my first job was delivering the Denver Post, and I remember how awful Wednesdays and Sundays were because of the freaking inserts and the size of the paper. I don't recognize it anymore. I mean, we still get the hard copy paper. My wife likes reading it every day, but it feels more and more like most of the paper fell out of the bag. Like it's
my favorite joke, and I wrote this myself.
Yeah,
Denver Post is so thin, I have to buy 2 copies to line my birdcage.
I mean, I still love that paper. I just want to. I mean, do you remember? It feels like 10 minutes ago, we had the Post and the News. Do you know what I mean? At the same time, and churning up all these great stories and competing with each other. And then all of a sudden, in this new environment, we're down to almost nothing. Ari, did you see anything about Dave Flaherty's polling on Magellan about who people trust in terms of whether it's the president and Polis and health officials all the way down through media? Did you see that?
I didn't. I guess that media didn't fare that well, though.
No, I think it comes out on Thursday. And if I remember the interview I heard on the radio, it was either at 5 or 9% of the people trusted.
And I've talked to folks at the Post. I've talked to people at Colorado Public Radio. And my prediction is Colorado Public Radio will be the newspaper of record in about 5 years. They have a funding model that works. People, last year, Colorado Public Radio made $3 million in car donations.
Wow.
Now, I don't care how great the Post is or not is, but nobody is donating their cars to the Denver Post. So, but my point to them was the reason they're so untrustworthy is not because they're bad people. They are great people.
I love them.
The editor, Leanne at the Post, is an incredible woman.
Yep, great lady.
Megan Traeger, who I worked for years, and you write for,
lady.
She is a spectacular young lady. She is heartfelt and wonderful, but they are blind to the fact, and going back to our 3 languages model, that their entire staff comes from one particular group, a progressive group, and that it alienates the other 2 groups, conservatives and libertarians. And I've challenged them on this, and they sometimes will see it, but then they push it away. And if they had in their offices, a real conservative reporter, not a commentator like me, but a reporter, it would change things, and we would trust them more. Same thing with Colorado Public Radio. We just don't have that. And so it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart because I remember the Rocky Mountain News and the Denver Post and that great time when we had two papers.
Oh my gosh. And we got both of them at the house growing up. I mean, pass them around. I mean, it was the heyday, I think, of print journalism. And then all of a sudden now we're at a place where I don't know what the future holds.
Ari, thanks for the Zoom. Let's keep zooming here. Let's talk to Stan Vanderwolf. And Stan is a county commissioner down in El Paso County, which I hear is still a county, and
a big one.
We did a episode right here in the studio for Devil's Advocate. Stan's done some incredible work on planning for these type of events, not for us, but for other governments. Stan, what are you drinking?
Hey, how you doing, John? And hi, George. How are you?
Hey, Stan.
I'm drinking hazy IPA from Red Leg Brewery. And if you've ever heard of the brewery, that's owned by a veteran. Oh, really?
Oh,
you guys check them out. They're awesome.
Red Leg
Brewery.
Where is it?
It's just off of Garden of the Gods Road in northwestern Colorado Springs.
All right, I'll toast to that.
Yeah, and this hazy IPA, it's awesome. So, and the gentleman that owns that company, a veteran, he's a great guy, big community supporter and all that stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, hey, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I just want to start off with something and then go through an explanation for it. But this is an appeal to Governor Polis. Every single company is essential. Every single one. Every company is essential to somebody. So if you're the owner of the company, you use that company to put food on the table for your family. So it's essential to you. So the governor should not be picking winners and losers. That's just flat out wrong. And I can tell you some of the things that I've been doing here recently, getting phone calls from companies in El Paso County, confused over the governor's orders. Am I allowed to be open? Am I not allowed to be open? And in some cases, they're specifically directed not to be open. The latest one yesterday from a campground, and they're not allowed to open. So the path to resolve this has been, I get the phone call, I send that to the county staff sends that to the state agency gets to mull over whether my appeal is good or bad. And then if they are willing to let the company open, then they give me the requirements for the company to open. Well, you know what that is? That's called central planning. Central planning. And central planning is a key component of socialism.
Let me add one extra point to that. If you want to add stupid terms, I'm trying to remember how we call this. Homeostasis. And it goes like this. You've all heard the thing of you put a frog in boiling water, he pops out. But if you put him in warm water and let it boil slowly, he stays there until he dies. Well, I believe that we humans are a bit like this. And government interference grows just like that. My favorite example is the TSA. In that, at first you walk through and then they start doing something extra ridiculous. And then they put you through those naked trometers, those pictures that show you naked. And people go, oh my God, that's awful. And then they kind of slow down for a little bit. And then before you know it, they're grabbing your crotch and you go, this is ridiculous. And they slow down, but it only goes in one direction. To the point where now when you travel, you will pay extra to go into the pre-check line.
That's true.
Because, but it's not just that it's a faster line, it not always is. But now the government knows where all your travel is, because in order to be pre-check, they know now where you're going. So you've given up your privacy just for a little bit of speed over the bureaucracy they created. Now, if this is not a definition of evil, I'm not too sure what is. But it's that homeostasis, that is, you get used to a new normal. And I think what Stan's talking about of we've got business owners who now have an extra hoop of compliance. I'm hoping that during this recovery phase, free marketeers, regular citizens say, enough. In order to get our jobs back, we need to remove regulations. We need to stop the licensing craziness. We need to unleash our ability to have voluntary relationships.
And John, I have to tell you, part of the problem is we've got a scenario where the state is telling you what the standard is and then also telling you how to build the watch. And this is just a mistake. So just like in so many other places, we have food safety standards, we have fire safety standards. Everybody figures out how to comply with them, but they do that at a local level. Either an industry at an industry level figures it out, or each individual company figures it out. So Governor Polis should set the standard and then get out of the way. Let the companies figure out how to comply with the standard, and they're going to come up with 100 different ingenious ways from Sunday to figure out how to comply with that standard. But at the same time, it means every company is allowed to open.
I think
all they got to do is meet the standard, and they can figure out how to comply.
One thing that we could also do, and I learned this from Stan too, was in the TSA model, is that they want to invade your privacy, you one-up them. So if you get in line and you start taking off your pants, like you just start undoing the belt.
You've seen me.
And they say, what are you doing? You're like, don't you want the pants? they just instantly wave you through. They're like, nope,
Really?
no, just keep going. And in part, you're calling them and doubling up. You're raising. They're like, we'd like you to step in this thing, and you're like, I want to do it without clothes. They're like, that's it, you passed.
What's sad is, I mean, I understand the TSA agents and the guys who are trying to make sense of the governor's orders and the Tri-County Health. They're just regular guys like us. And I want to be careful that I'm not beating them up, but at the same time, I want to go through TSA just in my underwear. One, because it's more comfortable, but more importantly, just to start making a point. Hey, let me put out a little pimp here. Stan did an episode of Devil's Advocate with us, so go to IITV on YouTube. Again, the channel is IITV. What Stan did about preparedness in the military for these type of situations was fascinating. So check that out. Stan, keep on
thanks.
drinking.
And one last real quick thing with regard to the modeling that we talked about in Devil's Advocate. I'll just make the point: the state still is not including economic elements to that modeling, right?
Of course.
They're only including health elements. Well, the health is the value generation side, and the economic is the damage side of every lever that a state agency pulls. So they're only including one side of the equation. So they're never going to get the right answer when they do it that
Point
way.
well done. And by the way, kind of a conservative thing here, which is we like to bitch about what they're doing to us. Really, where we have failed is to make these arguments to get people to understand that the real danger, if you love life, health, then you need to realize what they are doing to us right now is going to cost us more lives. It won't be as dramatic all at once as COVID, but people who are not getting their cancer treatments, people who are not getting their melanoma treatments, people who are losing their employment. A model I've seen shows pretty clearly for every percentage of unemployment, half percentage of unemployment, about 10,000 people die through domestic violence, through suicide, through depression, through all sorts of things. So if we care about life, we need to bolt out of this as quickly as possible and unleash the society again, freedom of association. And I'm pissed off by all the left and what they're doing, but really we need to look at ourselves and go, we conservatives, we haven't been able to make this point in a compelling enough way that it gets that attention. Hey, Stan, you're doing great stuff.
Thanks,
I appreciate
Stan.
it.
Thanks, guys.
Let's keep rolling on this. Bradley Mott. I need to know, Bradley, what are you drinking? Hey, Bradley.
Still muted.
No, we'll take care of your mute. Don't worry. There you are. He muted himself. Don't worry. We'll take care of it. Oh, that's right. We talked to you last week.
Go. You did the beard. Yes, it's the
beard.
Remember so tonight it's Redbreast 12 Scotch.
What is it called?
Redbreast 12.
Red Breast 12.
Same company that makes Jameson. It's just one of their more exclusive lines. But yeah.
Nice.
Really?
Good. Yeah. Well, it's funny that we should kind of start talking into what unemployment does to death rates. I was actually at one of the protests here a few weekends ago holding a sign that said unemployment kills people too.
Yeah.
Because to your point, I think the concern that I see with a lot of the protests and a lot of the comment that we have from the right on how we want to approach this is that we take a line of people assuming that we're selfish, assuming that all I want is a haircut or a beard trim or whatever.
Obviously, we do not want a beard trim, do we?
Well, it would. I'll take one, but no. But the real argument here, right, that we want to have, and this is different than what I thought I was going to talk about, but that's fine, is around the idea of what lives are we saving, what cost are we receiving from this, and a lot of the conversations I've had with friends have been focused on, it becomes almost a freedom of speech argument about going back into work or going back into public places where they say, well, we just can't trust people. And I say, well, but don't you want people to trust you? Because that's the freedom that you're arguing for here.
There is a fundamental difference. Forget Republican, Democrat, left, right. It seems as though there's a divide in America of I trust other people who are smarter than me versus no, I trust myself. And when you trust yourself, you start making good decisions for yourself. Now, there's a lot of things I don't know. And I do trust other people, but I trust them in a cooperative way. I understand people are scared. People are scared, people are confused, and therefore they're willing to let others make their decisions because, hey, Dr. Fauci is a smart guy, and he is a smart guy. But he's not a smart guy when it comes to the economy and how to pay for all this.
That's right. Listen, we've been beating this drum, but it's still true. And that is the idea that we have turned over decision-making to people who are the public health hammers. And so everything is a nail, and they don't understand, appreciate, or value the economic side of this thing. So you ask them, how do we cure this? Or how do we stop the infection? They'll give you the best answers out there. But you got to count on someone like us or a public official to be able to come in and say, I've heard you. I want to hear from the economist people. I want to try to figure out a way to make a decision that gets us in the best place possible. Not a place where we have the least loss of life, but
I'm curious, George, how have you been doing your job in the last month? I mean, you are a district attorney. I can't think of something more essential than prosecuting bad guys. And so you do it for several counties. You're the state's best known DA. You still have, I mean, you have a staff of how many?
232.
232. It's not like the bad guys stop being bad.
No, they don't.
How do you handle it?
Well, in part, it's become very, very difficult because, one, we haven't had a jury trial in months. That was by order of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. We have caved in on ourselves.
So much for the right for a speedy trial.
We've changed the rules on that to allow for there to be speedy trial that extends beyond our statutory right. Remember, there's the U.S. constitutional right under the Sixth Amendment. That doesn't have a time limit on it. But statutorily here in Colorado, we've said 180 days from the day you plead not guilty, you're going to have your trial unless you get a conviction. Well, we've extended that now for some reasons related to this emergency. But more than that, we have diminished all in-person appearances to just those people who are in custody, who we can do deals with, who are looking like, look, our deal is going to get you out of jail anyway. Why wait a month to do the deal? Let's just get you the hell out of jail right now to try to create that bed space. We have really caved in on ourselves some of these things, but that doesn't mean crime's gone away. I'll give you a perfect example. CMAT is the organization in the metro area that tracks and goes after all the car thief guys. CMAT. Yeah. And
one, you're a bureaucrat, so you understand these things. Two, you're in the military. So we don't speak this way. What is CMAT?
Metro area.
So you don't even know, do you?
Theft Task Force. And it's funny because I just talked to the commander of it on my way here. And what he said is this: the week before Governor Polis's order, we were tracking about 200-ish motor vehicle thefts in the metro area. The week after, over 300-ish, an increase of 100. And that has kept up in the week succeeding that. And so I say, well, buddy, tell me what's going on. He says, well, there's a couple things going on. One is the courts have sent the signal and the sheriffs have sent the signal, we're going to give you a PR bond. If you're committing
What's a PR bond?
Personal recognizance bond, we're going to give you a low-level makeable bond because we're not going to put you in the jail for property crimes, even low-level felony property crimes. And so I hear these anecdotes from guys all the time about, we picked up a dude over here at Sheridan who was stealing a car. They gave him an initial summons. They cut him loose. And then he stole another car like 4 hours later. And they caught him. Wow. And so this thing is going on everywhere. The domestic violence calls are very interesting. We have seen a big dive in the number of child abuse calls. And in part, that's because many of our child abuse calls come from mandatory reporters, teachers.
Oh my God, I never even thought about this.
That's right.
So let me kick this back to you, George, see if I'm following you. There's no doubt in my mind that domestic abuse situations, child abuse situations are only on the rise right now as people are going stir crazy. They're sitting around, they're drinking, they're doing it's bad. But when it comes to reporting that, it comes from teachers, it comes from the coach at Little League, it comes from somebody at the church who sees, wait a second, there's something going on. And since that's not happening,
sometimes
these kids aren't being protected.
That's right.
And again, pardon me for being really pissed off, but obviously I'm ahead of you in drinking.
Now.
Now, the people who are putting us under house arrest against our will are saying it's about saving lives. But in fact, what they're doing is killing people.
The mechanism that we've created has reduced to almost zero the ability for any third party reporting of domestic violence or child abuse.
I never even thought about that. That is fascinating.
Yeah.
That is awful.
So we'll see a surge here. I mean, at some point we're going to get back to it, and kids that might have otherwise shown a bruise or shown some emotional response that would have engendered an additional inquiry, that'll happen, but not until they have suffered however many cycles of abuse that they would have otherwise avoided.
I can't believe it. I tell you what, I want to close this up in about 10 minutes or so, because you're obviously responsible and stop drinking here.
Right,
so
right. Still in Denver.
It's still in Denver. I tell you what, let's talk to Jason. Jason, I need to know, what are you drinking, Jason?
Well, I'm going all out, and I've got a cherry Coke.
Good for you.
Is that a euphemism for something?
Is that a euphemism?
No, I live down in one of the smaller counties. I live in Crowley County, George, and I want to get your take on what Weld County is doing, because we're pretty red down in this area, and I'm thinking, that we should exercise our 14th Amendment right down in this area.
How do you mean that? What specifically when you say we want to exercise our 14th Amendment right, Jason, what are you talking about?
Part of the 14th Amendment talks about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the thing is, since we live in, we're the third poorest county in the state.
I think you're thinking about due process. The pursuit of happiness is only in the Constitution, is only in the Declaration.
Well, basically, we're being treated like any other county, and Weld County has basically stood up and said, we're not taking this anymore. The commissioners have. And that's my opinion is that's what our commissioners ought to do down here as well.
George, what do you think?
Well, I listened to Commissioner Barb Kirkmeyer on a radio show recently talk about the conversations that she and the other commissioners had with the governor just a couple nights ago over this very issue, because there was real tension brewing. And it sounds like the governor was open to the idea of what they wanted to pursue. I think that the question, though, it begs is, are we now at a place where each of these 64, well, at least 62 counties have to go groveling to the governor with, here's our plan to reopen, sire. Right. Does this meet your standard? And I think that's what we're hearing here out of Crowley County. And I think that's very, very frustrating to be in that position. I would like to see counties make decisions for themselves. And what I do appreciate about Governor Pulse's approach, even though I don't like it entirely, is he has allowed the idea that counties can get their way out from under his order by doing certain things. I don't like that he gets to be the approval authority, but there are other states that just say, la-di-da-di, everybody, border to border is going to apply.
Did you just make that up, la-di-da-di, everybody?
No, that's an Army thing.
That's an Army thing?
That's an Army thing.
All right. First of all, it's really easy for us as conservatives to pile on the governor. I want to recognize a couple things and tell me if you agree. One, this is uncharted territory.
Completely.
There have been a lot of things he has done, I think, that have been done right. He has opened up some licensing. Or saying if you've been licensed in another state, and you're a medical professional, we'll let you in here. He, to his credit, he said, hey, local governments where you have bans and taxes against single-use plastics, like plastic bags, get rid of them. He uses bully pulpit on that. I think we need to give him credit for that. That being said, I still think the idea of a statewide shutdown was a mistake.
Yeah, I do too. I think he was pushed into it, frankly, by the actions.
When you say push into it, how do you mean?
By circumstances. So, for instance, I don't think he wanted a statewide shutdown. I honestly, in his heart, I think he wanted to figure out a way to try to delay it or avoid it.
I think so.
But then all of a sudden, Mayor Hancock comes out and says, boom, Denver closed. Right. And then Tri-County Health comes out that morning and they pump one out. And then I think Boulder pumps one out. And then all of a sudden it looks like, is the governor just going to allow everybody else to make decisions that create this same kind of patchwork, or is he going to come in and be this leader for the state? And I think that's how that ended up happening. I don't disagree with what you've said about some of the stuff that he's done. I think in his heart, as much as he's a progressive, he's still a businessman. He has some business leaning, so he can appreciate, I think, how this impacts some.
This is the fascinating thing about Jared. And I've known Jared for 2 decades now.
Wow.
And
sure.
Yeah, I mean, and he used to call in on my late night radio show. And he's driving back as a congressman. I knew him when he was on the state board.
That's cool.
Yeah, no, and I've got a lot of respect for him and
smart
in a
guy,
lot of
clearly.
ways. Yeah, he's a smart guy. That being said, he's responding to a progressive constituency inside his own caucus, and they want control. They see this. 5% of the time, 10% of the time, he does pop out in odd ways as a libertarian. People think being a libertarian, oh, you just want to smoke pot. No, libertarianism is that you want the freedom for voluntary relationships. And as a gay man, he understands that on some levels and completely goes the opposite way on others. We'll learn a lot about this. I hope that he understands in order to recover from the shutdown, we need to bust a lot of these regulatory shackles that have been holding us back.
I think we've started to, and I agree that that should be the new norm, not the, hey, now we got to go back to all this regulation. But what I also appreciate about what you've said, and I'm taking the same approach with him, is that there are people out there who think that this guy, because of the situation he's in, we have got to just shower him with acceptance, praise, and accolades because of this situation. That's wrong. But there's also people closer to our side of the fence that nothing this guy does will be anything other than absolute catastrophe for freedom and for the state. That's not fair either. There's got to be something in between, because I think we could not be in the position where we're at. We could be in a much worse position, more like a Michigan position, but for Jared Polis. So he should get credit for that. Should we be further down the road? Should we be closer to a DeSantis than the Michigan governor?
Yes,
I think we should. Yeah, I do. But that's the direction we have to go. It's not you're all bad or all good. It's continue to move him in the direction that makes the most sense for him.
Let me put this out, because it is my biggest worry. My biggest worry is that the federal government backfills the states with made-up money, printed money, and therefore there's no cost to the shutdowns that these governors have created. There has to be a cost, because if we just paper it up with paper money, and it really is just fiat currency, this is not the emergency. The economic collapse is the emergency. And people our age, I mean, I know you are, 20, 30 years older than I am, that we haven't seen economic hardship. I remember my father dealt with, the late 70s, early 80s stagnation. That was an economic problem. We haven't. And good God, look at us, we're old. So people don't understand that this type of, and that was nothing compared to the Great Depression. It was nothing compared to other things. I'm worried about that.
I worry about that as well, and it's already happening. So, for instance, there's a CARES Act, as you know, which is this giant multi-trillion-dollar, I don't know if you want to call it a rescue fund, stimulus, bailout, whatever it is. But there's a huge chunk of it, hundreds of billions of dollars, that were intended to go to the states so that they could pass through to municipalities and counties less than 500,000. Well, the state, that's Governor Polis, has already sent signals to the counties and the cities, you're not going to get any of this money. The state is going to hold on to this money. We're going to use it to backfill our $3 billion shortfall because of the tax revenue. And you need to go back to the Congress. You need to go back to FEMA and beg for more money. So what you're talking about is in the works right now, and that's not how it should be. Only 5 of 64 counties qualify to get direct money from Congress. The others are being told to suck it by the state of Colorado. That ain't right.
All right, I tell you what, let's take 2 more Zoomers, and then I'm going to crawl under behind the bar and pass out. So that'll be good. Let's talk to Lynn. Lynn Spence, tell me, what are you drinking?
I drank it already. It was a Moscato as a dessert drink. It's gone.
That is a girl drink, by the way. A Moscato. I don't even know what it is, but
it's sweet. It's sweet.
So my grandmother, God bless her soul, I remember after nice dinners she'd offer us this thing called creme de menthe, which was
that's good too.
It was kind of like a peppermint patty, but it would knock you on your ass.
Oh. Actually, that sounds good.
That does sound pretty good.
It's not quite that strong. Not quite that strong. Anyway, my question is that I was several days ago. I was trying to talk since we can't go and nobody can get a haircut these days. I was trying to talk our.
Yeah, I'm really broken up by that. Let me jump in here right now. I'm so upset by you people bitching you can't get a haircut. It must be awful for you.
But anyway, so I tried to talk her into coming over and saying she could just cut my hair, my husband's hair. He's looking like a clown right now. It's so long. And my daughter's hair, trying to make it profitable. And she said that they revoked, she works for Dillard's, and she said that they revoked her license and that she cannot do it legally. She cannot. How can they revoke her license? She said, and I said, well, she said they don't revoke a doctor's license or a dentist's license, but they revoked the beautician's license. Is this true? Is she just
Yes, it's true. Think about this for a second.
That's totally unconstitutional to revoke.
No, it's because the whole licensing scheme, I believe, is unconstitutional. So I've heard from many hairdressers, because I spend a lot of time, obviously, under the dryer. They are worried that if they go to someone's home and if they have a personal voluntary relationship, they are actually violating the laws, the regulations, I should say, that and therefore they put their beautician's license under jeopardy. So think about this.
Wow.
We give you a license to have a voluntary relationship, to cut somebody's hair.
Right.
And we hold it above your head and saying, oh, but if you do it voluntarily between two people in the way we don't approve, we'll take it away and destroy your livelihood. So we've got, on one hand, we've got people who say, hey, we're going to give you government money to stay unemployed, sometimes more money than what you were making before. And then, by the way, if you go and be productive, we will destroy the way you make a living forever. No wonder people are afraid. No wonder people don't want to do it. We're asking people who cut hair and do nails to become criminals.
If we didn't have the licensing requirement, we wouldn't have to worry about that.
Say that again?
If we didn't have that licensing requirement, we wouldn't have to worry about that as much. One other thing, by the way, about this stimulus money, just because it came up. Look, everybody in my office is still getting a paycheck, right? That doesn't end. We're all government employees. I'd say the vast majority of the employees under my roof all make less than $75,000 a year. So that means people that are doing less than they would normally be doing, coming into work far less, being asked to do less, they're all still getting their same pay. They're also getting some of this rescue stimulus money. I don't, and again, I love my employees, and if they're watching, it's not because I don't love you, it's because I don't understand why taxpayer dollars are going to you. What's the harm you've suffered because of the coronavirus? I'd rather see that
None.
money.
You are
That's
now
right.
working less often.
And you're getting a little bit of a bonus for nothing.
So one of the interviews we did with Mike McCarty, who owns the Chop House up in Loveland, great place to grab a steak.
Delicious.
It is delicious. And he's worried about opening up at, quote, half capacity, which is still bankruptcy for him. But a lot of his people are making more money being unemployed. This is what's called a moral hazard.
Crazy.
And to get back to Lynn, the person, your friend who you want to come over and cut your hair, talk about this. Now let's think about this for just a second. Pardon me for going sexual, because that's what I do, go sexual. So if the government said you could not have a sexual relationship of your choice, the left would go apoplectic, and they should. But if you want someone to come over and touch your body by cutting your hair, they will make sure that person is unemployable for the rest of their life. Now, tell me, what the hell is a hate crime? That is a hate crime. Hey, Lynn, thank you so much.
Thanks, Lynn.
Keep on drinking. It's the only way it'll make sense. Let's do two more of these Zoom calls, and then we're going to call it a night. Let's talk to Bradley. Hey, Bradley, tell me, what are you drinking?
Hey, John, George, I'm drinking a single barrel Four Roses bourbon.
Oh,
cheers.
Good call.
A bourbon? I don't trust bourbon drinkers.
That doesn't seem like the cheap
But
stuff, though.
You do.
I'm sure.
Cigar smokers, and I've got a smoker-friendly Havana Manor.
Oh, right on. Love smoker-friendly.
Oh,
bring it down.
Have you noticed, by the way, just there's a real difference between Scotch drinkers, Irish whiskey drinkers, and bourbon drinkers. These are completely different people. And that Scotch drinkers are obviously more intelligent, better looking, more sophisticated. And who cares about the other two?
So my question is for George. George, I live in the People's Republic of Erie, and we straddle both Boulder and Weld County. And I'm on the Boulder side, so I can see freedom from my house. I'm a block away from Weld County. And like John, I've been somewhat locked down, although every day I take my chances going into the office, and that's just the way it is. So my question is, George, what are your thoughts about a home rule versus a statutory town? Erie's one of the largest statutory towns in the state, and yet our town elected officials can't make a decision, so they go with Boulder County rather than Weld, and yet this November they want to be a home rule town. So
let me stupid this down for people like me.
And me,
so
yeah.
Colorado Constitution allows the 700 plus municipalities in Colorado, these are cities and towns, to be either what's known as statutory, which is under the Colorado Constitution, but if they vote for it, they can come up with their own set of rules and be called a home rule city. Denver, Boulder, Aurora, most of the big cities have become home rule, and therefore the operating procedures, they're instead of being on a PC, they're now on a Mac, and they can kind of make up their own rules of how they do things, how the city works. And I look at Erie; it's a perfect example that Bradley puts up, which is, this is a city that is run by the Colorado Constitution, and now they want to create their own system so that they can do their own thing.
That's a great question. I don't know that I even have any of those inside my jurisdiction. I guess to the extent that it would give you.
Oh yeah, you do.
Do I?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Castle Rock or something?
No, not Castle Rock. Centennial is not, but I think there's some smaller.
Maybe Littleton or Greenwood Village. I'm not sure. Yeah. Aurora, though, of course, is. Yeah.
Is a home rule.
Yeah, yeah. Right. And Aurora is my biggest. I would say to the extent that it would give you more control over the city and the operations of the city, I'd be in favor of whatever that model is. Honestly, more accountability and more responsibility.
I can't believe how often you're wrong. It's just it blows my mind.
It's got to be at least 1 and 2.
Yeah. No, actually, what's nice about a statutory city is that the rules are in the Constitution. Therefore, everybody knows how to do it. Once the city council gets hold of their own operating system, they turn into Boulder.
Is Lakewood home rule?
I don't know. Probably.
It just had that slow growth thing. That's why.
Yeah, it is an interesting thought. It all gets down to what you've done, which is you got involved. Was this your first elected office, being DA?
Yep.
Wow.
That's right.
Wow. So being elected and running for your boards, running for your commissions. We talked to Kathleen Chandler earlier, who helps people get involved on their city government, not necessarily on city council, but on boards and commissions and all these other things. It really shows how important it is for those of us who believe in the Constitution, believe in individual liberty, to get involved in government. And we spend a lot of time sniping at one another, but whether it's a home rule city or a statutory city, people need to get involved in their local communities. And it's hard because you're asking people to get involved with a bunch of people who want to control your lives. That's right. It's difficult. Bradley, great questions. Appreciate it. All right, let's finish this up with Kevin. Kevin McNaught. I'm starting to get bleary-eyed. So tell me, what are you drinking?
John,
oh my God, I am so bleary-eyed. You look unfuzzy. You look completely fuzzy. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking pure sex.
What exactly is pure sex, by the way?
At the moment, it comes in the form of a black ale named 1554 by New Belgian Brewery.
Oh. But, you do know that they are communists, don't you?
Well,
Belgian Brewery are a bunch of socialists.
Well, it's chasing a 10-year-old Talisker shot.
All right, there we go.
And just a hint of Lysol.
And a hint of Lysol. And a hint of Lysol.
Yeah.
All right, Kevin, it is your job to
bring us on home.
Bring us on home. This is the last call of the evening. So what do you got for us?
Okay. So the conversation so far has been framed as an issue of saving lives versus saving jobs, or saving lives versus saving money, or saving lives versus saving the economy.
Couldn't disagree
and therefore,
with you
anyone
more.
arguing for lifting house arrest is sort of cast somewhere between Scrooge and the Grim Reaper. But as I understand it, it's really a question of saving some lives versus saving some other lives, as well as the economy. So my question is, do we have some reliable figures from somewhere, someone, that talks about how many lives are lost when you go from, 3-point-something% unemployment to 20-point-something% unemployment, when you go from people having jobs and hope to having nothing but, a grim future?
When we talked to the economist and Trump advisor Steve Moore a couple weeks ago, and I've heard this from several economists, that every half point of unemployment equates to about 10,000 deaths. This is from depression, suicide, domestic abuse, all sorts of issues that come. Unemployment causes death. Now we have unemployment technically higher than what we had during the Great Depression, or as good as our numbers are. If we care about life, we end these restrictions. We make it easier for people to start businesses and go to work. The biggest frustration I have is that people seem to be buying this leftist claptrap that it's either saving lives or greed. When in fact, if we care about saving lives, we unleash the power of freedom. We unleash the society so we can have our ability so people can direct their own lives. I've never seen anything, and it's coming so fast. And I'm having a hard time digesting all this. George, bring us home on all this.
Look, this is the tough part of this, because you can't help but sound, or at least create the sound bite for the left to make it all about this greed topic, when you acknowledge the simple truth that no decision we make is going to save every life that could be saved. Oh, it just can't be that way. There's always going to be death. It's just a question of how do you balance that against some of these other statistics and against the idea of freedom. My guess is if you allowed the public health officials to make all the decisions they thought were best, they'd make ones even more draconian than the ones we've seen. And they would say, I order everybody inside their homes, period, for a period of 2 weeks. You can't come out. You can't go for walks. You can't do anything. You're just going to stay inside. And they would shut down the planet Earth for 2 weeks if they could. So that can't be the measure. I agree with Kevin that, look, we're in the business here of trying to come up with the most freedom for the most people and to protect lives at the same time. I don't think those things are at odds. I just don't think, if your commitment is we want to have no deaths or the minimum deaths from the coronavirus, then nothing you do to get there matters.
What's so bizarre here is, I know I'm a cold-hearted bastard, but you actually like people. And I mean, my folks are in their mid-80s. I'm worried about them. Yeah. My son has Down syndrome. He's high risk. I worry about him. The people in your family, the people you love, are no different.
Right.
And for us to buy this falsehood that it's saving lives, to hear another Hollywood celebrity say, stay home and save lives, which means if you don't stay home, obviously you're killing people.
That's right.
No, do you realize by staying home, you're killing people? And we haven't made that. Yeah, I tell you what, let's say one last cheer. Hey, George, thank you so much
Thanks
for doing
having
this.
me, my man.
Zdrovia.
Yeah.
Appreciate your friendship, and I appreciate
It's
everything you do for Colorado.
Thanks for having me, John. This was great. You said there was going to be a clothing optional portion. Is that at 9:01?
That's at 9:01, and again, our pants go off. Just
let's go TSA right here.
Thank you all. We'll do this again soon.